Here's the thing. Birds are real, and it's mean to say that they're not.
Gasp.
Shock.
Awe.
Ooh.
Terror.
Welcome back to the Birds Are Real podcast. I'm Keish.
I'm Sam.
I feel like we haven't said our names in a while.
That's true. If you don't know how to spell my name, it's really difficult. It's S-A-M.
My name, Keish, as you may expect, is K-E-S-H, not Q-U-I-C-H-E.
Wow.
But it's short for K-E-S-H-A-V.
My name, S-A-M, is short for
Samantha.
S-A-M. It's just Sam, actually.
Oh,
Not
okay.
even Samuel. Some people don't know that, but it's an important part of who I am.
Were your parents like pretty hip, just call you Sam and not Samuel?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they thought, well, we're never going to call him Samuel anyway, so why bother naming him that? Just call him Sam. That's what we're going to call him.
That checks out.
Yeah.
If it wasn't clear, we never have a plan on how to start these episodes. We just start yapping.
Yeah, starting and ending these episodes is so confusing and hard to figure out, but
Cause then you have those like YouTubers who are very animated. It's like, welcome back, guys. You know, we're just not that, so we just kind of wing it.
no.
Wing it, bird pun.
Hey, nice. Yeah, I'm definitely not a very animated person. One of my coworkers messaged me today during work and said, like, hey, I went to a baseball game the other day, and I was sitting next to a person who reminded me completely of you. He had glasses, he had a mustache, and he was so depressed.
They really said that to you?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
And I was like, yeah, you know, that's the official uniform of a depressed baseball fan. You got me there.
Well, yeah, there's some important context, like if their team was losing, if they were just a part of a sad franchise.
Well, yeah, they're a Mets fan, which is
tough.
That's tough for them. I mean, they're okay this year, but they're in a bit of a rough stretch, and he went to this game where the Mets had a triple play turned against them, which is not very common.
I feel like anytime a triple play happens, there's always some like little league stuff that happens.
Like, it's very embarrassing for the team that got a triple play. Anyway, if it wasn't abundantly clear, this is actually a podcast about birds.
Yeah, I guess that wasn't really obvious from the get-go. But yeah, we saw a couple of lifers again this time around.
We did. We kind of went on an emergency birding trip on a rainy Saturday morning because we thought, oh, we're not going to have anything to talk about for the podcast. So we went out there. It did rain on us, but just a little bit. And we saw some cool birds. The shorebirds are showing up.
They really are showing up. We saw a lesser yellowlegs, which is the slightly more rare counterpart, at least in our area, to the more common greater yellowlegs.
Yeah, and I've been trying to see this thing forever. I keep taking pictures of yellowlegs that we see, and I'm like so sure that it's a lesser yellowlegs. I'm using my Sibley guide. They're really hard to tell the difference between. And I post in the bird ID group in our Discord. And then immediately people comment and they're like, greater yellowlegs. I'm like, oh, but what about the beak shape? They're like, no, greater yellowlegs. But this time, lesser yellowlegs.
What is the difference? I'm pretty sure it's the beak length in comparison to its head, right?
Yeah, so the lesser yellowlegs, slightly shorter beak length, but it's not very noticeable unless the two are like standing next to each other, which is not very common. But also, sometimes in a greater yellowleg's beak, there is a slight upturn, like it's slightly turned up, sort of like if you took an American avocet and just like smoothed it out. But there's like a little bump. And the lesser doesn't have that. And apparently also, the lesser yellowleg's beak doesn't have as much of a gradient from like light to dark. It's just dark.
Oh, interesting. So we did see the lesser yellowlegs. Mm-hmm. I thought I saw another lesser yellowlegs looking bird, but it was just very small.
Really small.
And then we found out that was a solitary sandpiper.
Yeah, that was a lifer for me.
Yeah, I think I saw one in last summer already. But always cool to see another one. I think the solitary sandpiper is one of the more uncommon sandpipers in our area.
Yeah, I think it was definitely interesting because I don't remember seeing something exactly like that last year. Mm-hmm. You know, I wasn't paying as close attention, but I'm pretty sure. I also saw, for me it was a lifer, the northern house wren, which I was like, oh look, a Carolina wren. Keish said, no, that's a northern house wren. And I said, what? You just made that up. I've never heard that bird in my life. But yeah, another kind of wren.
Yeah, I think it's one of the three wren species that we get around here most commonly. The other one being the winter wren. Yeah, the Carolina wren has this like lighter streak going across its eye, where the northern house wren's usually just a little more buff all over. Mm-hmm. But it has that quintessential beak of a wren, which I initially picked up on, and then after looking at the photo, I noticed it was a northern house wren and not just the typical Carolina wren that we see.
Yeah, so that was very cool. And then we did see a lot of warblers. There are warblers that we had seen before, so no additions to the life list, but really nice to see yellow warblers, a couple of yellow warblers, and I think a yellow rumped warbler too.
Yeah, for sure. The warblers, I'm sure they're just going to keep on coming.
I think my goal, what I would love to see, is a black and white warbler. That's like, if I could see one warbler this spring, it would be a black and white warbler.
Yeah, and I think that's totally doable. I'm pretty sure people have started seeing some black and white warblers in the area.
I think so.
Yeah. It's funny that we were talking about the greater roadrunner at the last episode, a type of cuckoo, which I didn't know about. Sam very graciously informed me.
Very gracious of me, yeah.
But there's a yellow-billed cuckoo seen at Bartram's Garden, the same place that the painted bunting was seen at.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was seen on the same day that I ran a 5K and then walked around the West Philly Craft Fair, so I couldn't move at all, so I did not go see it.
Yeah, so we went to the West Philly Craft Fair, which was a lot of fun. Yeah. A lot of the vendors had bird-related stuff, which was very nice to see. It was cool. Different bird prints. A lot of them were ceramic artists, so had pottery with birds painted on them. Yeah, it was all very cool. I ended up buying a map that the artist designed with some representatives from the Lenape tribe in what is now considered Delaware, and it's a very cool map, very well illustrated, and has a lot of information about native plants, native birds to the area. So yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. There was a lot of very cool stuff. I wanted to buy some things, but my insurance company decided recently that they're not going to pay for any of my dental work, and so I now owe my dentist like $4,000, so I don't have any disposable income really at the time. So I did not. But next year.
Yeah, man. That's a whole... We could do another podcast on how whack insurance is in the U.S., but that's for another podcast.
Yeah, we don't want to bum you out. But I don't know. It really got me thinking, this is like a problem, right? And this is maybe not the best thing to think when I see other people creating art, and selling it. But I really thought, oh man, I could do that, right? I don't know. Like, even if it's not a print, like we could do a calendar or something. I've made calendars as like Christmas presents for people in my life, but maybe we could make one, sell it. Or also stickers are on the way, which will be very cheap if we end up making them and selling them.
Yeah, I think a Birds Are Real calendar will do well, but you guys let us know if you would be interested in purchasing a calendar with a different bird each month. I think that would be cool. But yeah, these artists definitely, it's hard work, deserve to charge whatever they're charging.
Oh yeah.
I'm like slowly trying to get into photography of people because that is a little more lucrative than photography of birds.
Yeah, it turns out birds don't pay you to take pictures of them, but people will pay you to take
people
pictures
will pay
of
you,
them.
and I don't know. This is not a therapy session or anything, but a little bit of imposter syndrome sets in when you're setting prices for things.
Yeah.
But you believe your work is good, and you deserve to charge what you think it's worth.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't believe my work is good, but
don't say that.
I can pretend.
One last thing, I'm just throwing good vibes into the air.
Yeah.
There's a new spot because we go to John Hines all the time. Mm-hmm. There's a new spot that I want to explore called Morris Park.
Yeah.
I might go there tomorrow.
Nice.
People have seen hooded warblers, Blackburnian warblers, pileated woodpeckers. Sounds amazing. Yeah. So I think I might go tomorrow morning, and I'm just throwing this out there just to hopefully get some good vibes my way.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that you go, you scope it out, you say, wow, this place is great. I really hope you don't see a pileated woodpecker. And then we go this weekend and we do see a pileated woodpecker.
That's fair, that's fair. I would feel a little left out if you saw a pileated woodpecker and I didn't, but hopefully we both end up seeing one pretty soon.
Yeah. Have you seen there's this pileated woodpecker in New England that's like smashing people's windows?
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah. It's like a menace. This is in the New York Times. There's a pileated woodpecker. People are like, I don't remember what the town was. It might have been in Massachusetts. I know it was a New England town. Mm-hmm. And people are like, well, what's this like string of vandalism? People are smashing our car side mirrors. Like, what's going on? It's a pileated woodpecker. It's just causing havoc.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know, a pileated woodpecker is pretty big, like kind of like crow-sized.
Crow-sized, yeah.
Yeah, so they can do some damage with their beaks for sure.
All right, so into our hoot topics now. We have a couple we'd like to go over today. And the first one, Keisha's going to read to us.
Okay. First one comes from Nick, very loyal listener, longtime listener.
Years and years.
Years and years. Longtime listeners would know he's a longtime listener because he does send in his hoot topics, which we appreciate. He asks, my bird feeder has been going crazy lately, mostly with local house finches. One thing that I have noticed is that some of the males have much more red plumage than others, and that got me thinking, are some birds more attractive than others? I know that other birds have mating dances or calls, but what goes into the mind of a bird when deciding who they want to mate with? Is bird riz real?
Yeah, so from my understanding, basically, yes, bird riz is real. It's very real. So it's interesting. When you talk about birds like the house finch, where the plumage is kind of a big deal with breeding and selecting mates, it's kind of this cognitive dissonance where if you're thinking about evolution in terms of natural selection, in terms of like being able to survive, being able to eat and avoid predators, having bright plumage is not a good thing because it makes you more noticeable. But as for evolution in terms of what I believe is called sexual selection as opposed to natural selection, it's actually very important to have bright plumage because it does attract other birds, right? So there's kind of this interesting balance of, you know, not wanting to be too noticeable, but wanting to be noticeable enough. Also, like, the birds don't control how noticeable they are. They don't control their plumage. They're just, like, born, you know, with bright or not bright plumage. But there's definitely a lot that goes into it. Those dances, the reason they have such elaborate, long dances is so they can attract a mate. And normally, to my understanding, the mate is chosen based on how good their dance is, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. I think it all goes back to the evolutionary concept of fitness. Like, you want to present that you are a fit individual capable of producing offspring and capable of passing down like your desirable genes, right? So if you have a brighter color, if you have a good mating display, then that all signals that you have good genes and that you are able to pass them down.
Yeah, this is why I learned how to do the hammer dance during middle school.
I think something that we may want to look into is the possibility that some of the house finches you're talking about are purple finches.
Yeah, that would be very cool because they look very similar.
They look very similar. Purple finches are a little more uncommon than house finches, but
they're around.
They are. Where Nick lives, don't want to dox him, in Massachusetts, they are there.
Yeah.
And if you look up a photo of a house finch and a male finch, and a purple finch, the males of the purple finch species are brighter and have like a darker plumage, I would say. So double check. Try to differentiate if they're a different species, or maybe, you know, some of the house finch males, some might have brighter plumage, some might not, and that can be chalked up to how readily available food is for them, genetics, etc.
Yeah, definitely. And this is actually something that you can try to look into. A lot of our listeners are US based and have American robins around them, but that's a bird that is very large for a songbird, is pretty noticeable, and is pretty tolerant of people getting close. This is something that I've noticed in robins, is that their plumage is actually quite variable from robin to robin. Like, they all have the kind of bright red chest, but you'll see a lot of variation in that, and also eye markings. They have some white eye markings, and that'll really differentiate between bird to bird. And sometimes it's hard to see plumage differences if you're looking at like one type of bird. House sparrows, for example, they have a lot of intricate markings. It's different on a lot of them, but they're so small and they're so kind of jittery. It's hard to really look at them and tell. But robins, you can really look at them and notice, like, this robin looks this way, this other robin looks this way, and you can kind of try to think about why that is, you know?
Yeah, Nick, so just try to pay a little more attention. But yeah, hopefully we answered your question. And let us know if some of them do end up being purple finches. I think that would be really cool.
That'd be very cool. That'd be a lifer for me. And I do accept lifers through proximity, so...
Cool. So our next hoot topic is by Sumi, and and Sam will read her question.
All right. So here's that question. Thank you, Sumi, again. Great questions. If you are going to be reborn as a bird in your next life, which bird would you want to be? Parentheses, which bird do you think has the best life? This is, in my opinion, a very interesting question and one that you can approach from a lot of different angles. Right?
I agree.
I really like that you added the which bird do you think has the best life qualifier, because that made me think about it in a different way. So my initial thought, and it's very easy to go to birds that we see often, right? So I'm thinking we go to John Hines a lot. What bird do I think has the best life? I think the bird at John Hines that has the best life is the mute swan. There are a lot of mute swans around John Hines, but they all kind of like take up their own little area, right?
Very territorial.
Very territorial. They have their own area that they go to, and they don't really seem to have any natural predators. Like, there's a lot of osprey around, there's bald eagles. They're not going after the mute swans. They are invasive species, and they're just going around, they're eating. If a duck or a goose gets too close to them, they kind of do that weird thing with their wings where they puff them up into like an angry V and charge at the duck. We saw that the other day. It was pretty funny. So I think mute swans are having a great time. That is not my answer, though.
Oh, I was going to say, if you picked mute swan, you would be an invasive species and you would have no natural predators. You're kind of just chilling at that point. I know,
yeah. But it seems like not very noble, not a very noble bird to be. But I think if I'm thinking more of what would I want to be, as opposed to what bird do I think necessarily has the best life, I think I would want to be a short-tailed albatross.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is a bird that we haven't seen. They're normally really only seen over like the open ocean pretty much, because they just fly basically their entire lives. Like, they don't land very often. They're flying all day, every day. And they, obviously they land sometimes, but a lot of flying. And as a human, I cannot fly. I don't know if you knew this about me.
I wasn't sure, but thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, BMI is a little too high, but I can't fly. So I would love to be a bird that's just flying all the time. Completely different life from what I have right now.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. You don't think it would get old at any point if you're flying 24/7?
No, I assume my lifespan as an albatross is quite a bit shorter than my lifespan as a human, so...
You just be in awe the whole time?
I'll be in awe the whole time, then I'll kick it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
And like you said, you can approach this answer in some different ways. Having the best life, when I think of someone who had the best life, I think of the Buddha.
Yeah.
He was enlightened. Mm-hmm. And he escaped the cycle of reincarnation. He had a good life.
Yeah, because the best life is one that results in no more life.
Yeah,
because life is suffering.
Life is entirely suffering. So if you can stop doing that, all the better, right?
Great.
So my answer is the Himalayan vulture.
Oh, okay.
Because, vultures, I think they really embody giving up your material possessions in life. They don't acquire their own food. They don't acquire their own food via hunting. They're just eating scraps. They're scavengers.
They clean up after everyone
They clean
else.
up.
Yeah.
It's noble, very noble in fact.
It is very noble.
Yeah, so they're not really chasing earthly material goods at that point, right? Mm-hmm. They're just eating what they can get. They're not really indulging in a lot of life's indulgences.
Yeah.
Again, they're just eating the scraps of what other birds or other animals don't want.
And they take a lot of wrath from people, I feel like. I think vultures are seen as dirty and bad and evil, and they just accept that. They accept kind of how they're seen, and yet they continue, they persist with this noble venture.
Exactly. And then I picked the Himalayan vulture. You know, I could picture a vulture like sitting on top of Mount Everest meditating or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's my answer. Himalayan vulture.
It's a great answer. Shout out Scotty. Scotty sent us an email that kind of helped us think about vultures. Mm-hmm. We'll answer that email in a more robust way in a future episode, but just want to say shout out Scotty.
Yeah, I think it could be a good main topic, honestly,
so. Yeah.
in season 3. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. On the topic of emails that we have received, I do need to set the record straight. I need to atone for some sins of my own over the past couple of episodes. If you are an avid listener of the Birds Are Real podcast, you may recall a few episodes back where I lauded an email from listener Tom as the best email we've ever received. A couple episodes later, I then said that an email from one Randy Spaghetti was an amazing email. I said that I went to bed with it under my pillow. I said it made me laugh, it made me cry. And
Randy Spaghetti, a long-time listener in his own right.
Long-time listener, absolutely. But to my dismay, this caused our dear, dear listener, Tom, to feel a bit slighted. To feel as though I had disrespected him and the email that he so lovingly crafted. Dare I say he got a little jealous that I enjoyed this other email so much. So I'd like to set the record straight. We got another email from Tom. It was wonderful. It was long. I felt as though I was reading Homer's Odyssey. That's how much it moved me. I recite it to myself when I wake up. It's my mantra, this 6-paragraph long email. It takes a long time to recite it. I responded in kind. Tom, I do hope that you will accept my apology for daring to suggest that another email could even come close to the email that you've sent us. I appreciate your listenership. I appreciate your craftsmanship when sending these emails. And to Randy Spaghetti, you also sent a nice email, but unfortunately I must say Tom comes out on top.
Dang, we're really sowing some discord in between our listeners.
Yeah.
In my eyes, every listener is equal, and we appreciate all of them. Sam has his favorites.
Yeah,
now that it's all out there, I think we can move on.
I hope so.
Hopefully everyone's on the same page now.
Yes.
And we can just talk about some birds.
Excellent.
But if you do want to try to craft the best email possible, feel free to send it to us. We can have this ongoing competition.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing. We're old. We don't really have like drama in our lives anymore. This is great. This is excellent drama. So please enter this greatest email ever competition if you dare.
All right. And I think that takes us into the main topic here.
I'm excited.
You want a hint?
I want a hint.
All right.
Wait, I want to guess just with no hint at all.
Okay.
Toes.
Toes.
Bird toes.
I thought about it, but that was my second choice for
okay.
today, but no. All right, here we go.
Jeopardy.
Yeah, but like what's the other thing I was doing?
Humming.
Yeah?
The Jeopardy theme?
Yeah, wait, okay. And then? Like the verb?
Humming?
Yeah.
Hummingbirds.
Yes.
Whoa.
I don't know why I chose the Jeopardy theme to do, but we're talking about some hummingbirds today.
Wow.
Yeah, I think hummingbirds, they're kind of a bird of extremes. They see what the other birds are doing, and then they just push past all their expectations. And I just want to commend them by dedicating a whole main topic episode to them.
I think that's great. I think you're right. Like hummingbirds, I sort of see as like, what's the opposite of sub? Super bird. Like, you know.
You see them as super bird.
Like in the sense of like the grammatical sense where super is the opposite of sub.
Yeah.
Like I see them as above other birds.
A superior bird?
Kind of, yeah. But like, I was just using like a prefix.
Okay. Yeah, before we started birding last year and I saw a hummingbird, I didn't think that hummingbirds were like this far north in the U.S. I thought they were just like a tropical bird, which for the most part they are. But I think it's cool that we get hummingbirds up here in Pennsylvania, and which I'll talk about as north as like Alaska, Canada.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's super cool.
Hummingbirds are native to just the Americas.
Oh, really?
There are no hummingbirds in Europe, Africa, Australia, Antarctica. Any other continents I missed? I got them all.
Asia?
No, Asia as well.
That's surprising. I guess I never realized that. To our listeners who do not live in the Americas, sorry, that's a bummer. Like, it's kind of hard to describe the experience of seeing a hummingbird, I feel like.
Yeah, well, first of all, they're very, very colorful for the most part, iridescent, and their wings are so fast. They're kind of invisible at that point, like when they're hovering. Yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later. Only 15 out of the like over 300 species of hummingbirds breed regularly in the U.S. The vast majority live further south, Caribbeans, Central and South America.
Right. We talked about the sword-billed hummingbird back in season 1. I remember that. That was in like Central America.
And we talked about the doctor bird, which is a type of hummingbird endemic to Jamaica.
Nice.
For us in PA, Pennsylvania, we mainly only get 2 species, most commonly the ruby-throated hummingbird and less commonly the rufous hummingbird. Other species have been spotted in Pennsylvania, but they're often considered accidental visitors. They don't reliably breed like year to year.
Kind of like the painted bunting.
Yeah. And that includes black-chinned hummingbirds, calliope hummingbirds, Allen's hummingbirds, and Anna's hummingbirds.
I recognize a lot of these names from Wingspan.
Yes.
But not so much from seeing them. I've only ever seen the ruby-throated hummingbird.
Same here. Yeah, so like I said, we mainly only get like 15 species at any given time in the U.S., most of those being in Texas, just given its proximity to Mexico.
Texas, man. Shout out Texas. They got every bird
Texas's birding scene is almost unmatched, man.
Yeah.
It's really great.
Yeah.
I would love to go to Texas for perhaps that sole reason.
Yeah.
And Big Bend National Park.
Right.
The area that is furthest away from light pollution in the entire world, I think.
Yeah, best like stars you can see.
Best stargazing ever. So we might have to do a trip to Texas for multiple reasons. Yeah. But yeah, most species live like within 10 degrees latitude to the equator. So you get a lot of South American, Central American countries. The country with the largest number of documented hummingbirds is, do you want to take a guess?
Ooh, I will take a guess. Testing my geographical knowledge here, I'm going to be exposed, but I'm going to say El Salvador.
Good guess.
It makes me think I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think a bigger country would have made more sense than tiny El Salvador, but the answer is Colombia.
Okay.
Do you know how many species? Guess how many species out of the like over 300 are in Colombia?
Okay, let's see. You said over 300. I'm going to guess high. I'm going to go 250.
All right, you guessed a little too high. It's 165.
That's still a lot.
That's a ton.
That's like more than half.
Yeah, followed by Ecuador, which is like over 130, Peru over 120. And I know sometimes we just throw out numbers and it's like, okay, that's cool. But let's think about like having over 100 species of just hummingbird in your country. I can, like, Sam and I have about maybe like 150-ish species in our life list in general.
159.
159 for Sam. I think I'm less than Sam, but in the 150-ish bracket. But more than that are just hummingbirds in Colombia.
Yeah.
I feel like I can just off the top of my head maybe name 200, 250 bird species total. Imagine birding in Colombia and over 150 of those are just hummingbirds.
Yeah, I mean, if I hit a snag on my goal to 200 this year and I somehow am able to take a trip to Colombia, I think that's going to be an easy way to check off a few more.
Yeah, 100%.
That is kind of crazy to think about. There are more hummingbirds than we have on our life list of just normal birds.
Yeah, I feel just like off topic, we should see how many like birds we could just list off the top of our heads. I think that'd be fun. I feel like it might be around like 200, 250-ish.
I hope so. I fear that I would just like freeze at a certain... I sometimes try to do this. Like, you ever tried to play the Immaculate Grid?
Oh, yeah.
You have to name like baseball players.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll just like totally freeze when I try to do that.
I will admit, when I'm trying to fall asleep and I can't fall asleep, I'll just try to name as many birds as I can in my head and then I'll fall asleep.
Oh, nice. So you might fall asleep while we try to do this, though.
I might. Just because we're going to name so many birds.
Right.
You know, yeah. Going back to how hummingbirds are only found in the Americas. The oldest living hummingbird fossil, the oldest hummingbird fossil dated around 30 million years ago was discovered in Germany.
Whoa.
In 2004.
Oh.
I mean, 30 million years is not a super long time frame in terms of like the lifespan of the Earth or like geological time frames. But this wasn't far enough back to where we were in like Pangea, just like a supercontinent. Animals were able to move around. So maybe there was a European or like a Eurasian hummingbird species that just went extinct.
Oh, I guess so. Yeah, that's really surprising, but cool to hear.
Yeah, unfortunate for our European and Asian listeners. No longer have a hummingbird, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. The ruby-throated hummingbird is what I'm going to be referring to in general most of the time I'm talking here, but these general facts kind of apply to all the hummingbird species for the most part. But we don't have ruby-throated hummingbirds here year-round. We get them for migration.
Right.
The ruby-throated hummingbird's migration can span from Canada to Costa Rica.
That's pretty long.
It's super far, considering how small a hummingbird is.
Right.
And also interesting to think about given what we know about hummingbirds and how they need a lot of food all the time.
Right. If we think about the digestive system episode that we went over, the hummingbird's one of those small birds that kind of just needs to be constantly eating, right?
Yeah, just because it has a super high metabolic rate. We'll touch on that a little later. Shout out to the rufous hummingbird, though, which has the longest migration of any hummingbird, but also has the longest migration of any animal relative to body size.
Oh, yeah.
I think some butterflies come close, but the rufous hummingbird has the crown there.
That's cool, yeah. Because, I mean, think about, like, if I run a mile, that's about, 5,280 feet divided by...
That's exactly how many feet it is,
right.
Yep.
But divided by, 6? Like, that's like how many of my body lengths I have to run.
Yeah, this is Sam's, 7th time casually dropping that he's 6 foot during the podcast.
6'1", actually.
6'1" during the podcast? Okay, cool.
But think about, a hummingbird going a mile. That's... I don't know, how big is a hummingbird? 4 inches?
A few inches, weighs depending on the species, weighs a few grams.
So it's 24 times longer than me.
Yeah, it's wild to think about what they go through. So yeah, as we talked about, hummingbirds have a high caloric intake requirement just because of their high metabolism. So for these long migrations, they need to fatten up over a few weeks just to make sure they can survive over these long distances.
Right.
They sometimes fly up to 20 hours per day.
Oof.
Which they're like putting in work.
I know. I compared that to a house cat that sleeps for 20 hours a day.
Yeah. They do of course stop and sleep and refuel, but they need to prep beforehand before taking on such a long and arduous migration. While doing some research, I found that a lot of people think they hitch a ride on the backs of geese. No, they don't do that.
I've never heard that before. That'd be so funny.
Honestly, if you told me that pre my birding journey here, I might have believed it.
Yeah.
Given that, because I know they need a lot of energy. They need to eat super often. So I think maybe in my mind I would think, how are they going to do that if they're flapping their wings so fast all the time? So maybe they do hitch a ride on some geese.
Yeah, symbiotic relationship.
There we go. But it's false.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time when we think about migration, it's easy to imagine a large group of birds. Speaking of geese, this isn't the case for hummingbirds, though. Hummingbirds are solo travelers for the most part, and that's because males migrate north a few weeks earlier than females do. Any idea why?
Interesting. I wonder, do they maybe find an area, then claim it for themselves and stock up on food or something? I don't know. Yeah,
that's a great thought. You're exactly right. Hummingbirds are very territorial, so the males migrate north a few weeks earlier than the females, and they kind of get a spot. They establish territory around other males to just prepare for when the females arrive, so they can mate and have enough food. Since they're very territorial, they're of course going to fly solo and not together with other males. Bonus tip for us wildlife photographers: since hummingbirds are very territorial, if we see one in the wild, while it may be zooming around for food, they'll tend to return to specific spots every now and then because they need to maintain their territory.
Yeah, so that's good if we just employ a little patience. Maybe we
employ a
have
little
better
patience.
luck.
Like if it flies away, you might be like, oh, I'm out of luck. It's out of sight. Stay put. It might return. And make sure you set your shutter speeds for, I think like 1/4,000 is like the minimum requirement. Yeah. Their wings flap really, really fast. So to freeze that motion, you need a super high shutter speed.
Yeah, need a lot of light so you can make that shutter speed real quick.
Yeah, I would love to get a pic of a hummingbird this season. That'd be great.
A hummingbird won the John Hines photo contest last year, so that's what the judges like.
That's what the judges like. And, you know, our artistry is not about what you personally like or personally find value in. It's all about winning competitions.
It's all about winning competitions.
So if that's what we must do, that's what we're going to do.
Got to do what you got to do.
I'm just going to call you out here.
Oh, no.
If you've seen a ruby-throated hummingbird, tell me how it looks like.
It looks, well, it's got actually quite a lot of green on it for being something called ruby-throated, but of course has a red throat.
A ruby throat.
A ruby throat, excuse me. And like wing-wise, can't see it, but it's tiny. It's got a pretty long, thin bill. Mm-hmm. And I want to say there's some white on it, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, you're right. Primarily like white on the chest. A lot of the sides are green, wings are green. The ruby throat in some lights, if the light catches it really right, it's like this iridescent, really red rubyish color, which looks really pretty. But in most lights, it actually looks pretty dark.
Yeah.
If you've noticed that, like when they're flying around, like I'm looking for that red spark or like that red flash, but a lot of the time you don't see it. It looks dark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Females don't have that ruby throat. They do have that green and white coloring though.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah, just some cool physical facts about hummingbirds. Hummingbirds can fly both forwards and backwards.
Right, I think they're the only bird that can do that.
They are the only bird that can do that. Yeah. They beat their wings more than 50 times per second.
That's all, like...
When flying.
Yeah. Try to do anything 50 times per second, but you can't. That's impossible.
And up to 200 times per second if they're hovering.
Really?
Or diving through the air.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mentioned hummingbirds are a bird of extremes. They can dive up to 35 miles an hour, which you might think, hey, that pales in comparison to the peregrine falcon, which is like over 200. But per unit body weight, they're the fastest bird.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Yeah, because I guess think about the wind resistance it must face being so light and tiny.
Yeah, and I do appreciate these facts about hummingbirds in terms of per unit weight, because when I was in second grade and weighed 40 pounds, I was able to do 20 plus pull-ups during the presidential fitness test, and I thought I was the coolest kid out there.
That does make you the coolest kid out there. I think I did 5.
I think I was the coolest kid out there. Maybe not for that reason though.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's part of it though.
Okay, that's part of it. Yeah. I can't do 20 pull-ups now.
No, that's impossible. I don't know how you could possibly do that before.
Going back to their hovering, they're the only birds that can hover still in midair for 30 seconds or more. You may be thinking, Keish and Sam, you guys have been talking about the American kestrel all the time.
Yeah.
But birds of prey, they can hover for similar amounts of time, but they rely on thermals or winds to keep them steady. The hummingbird is hovering out of pure self-exertion.
That's nuts. Yeah. Yeah, I guess you're right, because there does need to be kind of like a headwind or something for a kestrel to be hovering like that.
Yeah, and hovering requires more energy than like almost any other activity on Earth. Like imagine treading water, but like there's no water.
Yeah.
Like that's so difficult.
Yeah. You're not bobbing up and down at all. You're staying completely still.
Yeah. So again, very, very impressive, the ruby, or the hummingbirds in general. Hummingbirds are also the world's hungriest birds. They have the fastest metabolic rate of any vertebrate on the planet, again, relative to their size. So they need to eat like every 10 minutes or so. So yeah, they consume a huge amount of energy. How many calories do you think a hummingbird needs to eat per day?
Oh, geez. How many calories does a human need to eat per day?
On average, maybe like 2,000, but it varies, of course.
Okay. So hummingbirds are tiny, but I feel like the answer is going to be high. I don't know, like 500?
It's a good guess. About 10 to 15.
Oh.
When I was initially doing some research, I was on BBC Earth website, which you would think is reputable, right?
Yeah.
And they said they ate between 6,000 and 12,000 calories per day.
Oh.
And I was like, there's no way that's correct. And it's not correct. check your sources, BBC Earth. They tagged a source there, but it was like some random person's blog post, which is, yeah. So like if you do the math, 6,000 to 12,000 calories for a hummingbird just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That's like, because a calorie is a calorie irrespective of body size or anything else.
Okay.
So like a hummingbird is not eating 3 people's worth of food a day, right?
Yeah.
But for its body weight, again, hummingbirds can weigh as low as like 1 to 2 grams, depending on the species. Yeah. 10 to 15 calories is huge for them.
Yeah. Well, maybe the blog post meant like 6 to 12,000 calories with a little c. Because isn't like big C calorie actually 1,000 calories? So when we're talking about 2,000 calories, we're actually talking about 2 million calories.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. The math is all for regular calories that we talk about, because kilocalories, which you were mentioning, are like used in like if you ever gone to a different country like and bought a bag of chips and read the nutrition facts, especially in like Asia, they have all their stuff in like kilocalories. Oh. But yes, I did double check. All the math that is done is in regular calories.
Oh wow, okay.
The math they used here was for the rufous hummingbird. The rufous hummingbird has a basal metabolic rate of 1,600 kilocalories per kg per day. This means that for every kilogram it weighs, it needs to eat 1,600 calories. So this may sound like a lot, but hummingbird is about like 0.003 kilograms. So to put it in perspective, a human with the same metabolic rate as a rufous hummingbird would need to eat 55 burgers, 55 fries, 55 tacos, 55 pies. Or in other words, 150,000 calories.
Wow.
So yeah, it's kind of wild how it's only 10 to 15 calories that they eat a day, but in comparison, if you want to compare it to how much human would have to eat with the same metabolic rate, it's 150,000 calories.
That is so many calories, man. I glad there's no hummingbirds behind me in a pay it forward chain if I'm in a fast food line, 'cause that'll run me dry.
Yeah. So given that hummingbirds' energy demands are so high, to survive the night when they're not feeding, they enter a hibernation-like state called torpor.
Right, I've heard about this.
Yeah, they're kind of just totally unreactive to outside stimuli, but they conserve energy by like slowing their heart rate down super low and also dropping their body temperature. So they're not really awake per se, but also like they're not really doing a lot of metabolic function at all.
Right, it's kind of like they're putting themselves into like cryo freeze.
Kind of, yeah, for sure. So in terms of like absolute size, the smallest hummingbird and the largest hummingbird species are not that different. But if we're talking about relative body size, then it's huge. The smallest hummingbird is over 10 times as small as the largest hummingbird.
Wow, are we talking like what? Are we talking about like length from like?
We're talking about
tail?
weight. We're talking about weight.
Oh,
so
wow.
the bee hummingbird of Cuba weighs as little as 1.6 grams, which is like a paperclip.
Jeez.
And the largest hummingbird, the northern giant hummingbird, which is native to like the Andean mountain highlands in South America, is about 20 grams.
Oh, jeez.
And again, try to think about that in terms of another bird species. Think about like a hawk, and a hawk either 10 times as big or 10 times as small. Like it gets wild.
Yeah. Wow. It's like they're really just kind of their own thing.
They're really an extreme bird. Like they're the stunt bird or
Yeah.
the stunt animal of they're the stunt bird of the animal kingdom, in my opinion.
They'd leave a big impact on a Survivor season, but as we've seen this season, spoiler alert, the stunt person doesn't go too far.
Unfortunately not. Yeah, so that's all I had on hummingbirds today.
Interesting. That's really fascinating. They really are just kind of like their own like subcategory of birds. 200 of them almost in Colombia alone is just nuts.
Yeah, I'm like still trying to put myself in the shoes of like a Colombian birder and just trying to differentiate between like over 100 different species of hummingbird every day.
I know.
Seems like a tall task. But yeah, any Colombian listeners, I know we have some of you. Let us know if you have any experience with that.
Yeah, definitely. I really hope we see some hummingbirds this year. There's actually a pretty easy way to create hummingbird nectar, like at home, if you want to set up a hummingbird feeder. I did a couple years ago, but we did it like in September, and then it got cold, so it didn't work. But it is very easy, actually.
And I think hummingbirds do readily come to hummingbird feeders. Yeah.
Yeah, because they need all that food. So, cool. Yeah, if you want to be able to provide for your local hummingbirds, go ahead. It's basically you just like dump sugar and water and boil it.
You could be helping out a hummingbird on its long, arduous migration. So yeah, I think that brings us into the closing caw here.
All right.
Alrighty.
We're approaching the end of the season. And the score has not changed in quite a few weeks.
Yeah, we haven't had the greatest showing. We're definitely doing worse than season 1 somehow.
Absolutely. Well, because we did all the easy birds in season 1.
That's true.
Yeah. But here we go. 3-3.
I'll play one for Sam first.
Great.
Sam, are you ready?
I'm ready as I'll ever be.
All right, here we go.
Interesting. Okay. So this can bring me a couple of different directions. It's kind of high-pitched, which brings me to a couple different families. I'm thinking of, perhaps something in the gull, tern, perhaps even peep family, but it also brings me to some birds of prey who have high-pitched sounds like that. Some hawks, some falcons, maybe a kestrel. But then also, what else sounds like that? I feel like maybe some woodpecker-ish things kind of have that high-pitched noise. Let's think. Let's engage our brain here. It sounds very familiar, like lately. And lately we've been seeing and hearing quite a few peeps. So I'm wondering, I'm kind of going down that direction. Or, maybe not specifically that genus, but, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Yellow legs come to mind because we've been seeing a lot of yellow legs. But then I have to make a choice, don't I? Greater or lesser? I'm going to go with a greater yellow legs.
You got it.
All right. Nice. Wow. Another point in the win column here.
Yeah. See, and let me know if this is true. When we just heard it now, or when you just heard it now, it was tough to parse out. But when I told you it's a greater yellow legs, it's like, oh yeah, it's obviously greater yellow legs.
Yep. Yeah. It's definitely like you hear those guys before you see them sometimes. Because they're very vocal when they fly around. All right, 4-3-1. Are you ready for yours?
I am ready. Well, I don't want to be too cocky here, lest I get this wrong. But I think this is a bird we saw towards the end of our last birding excursion. And then I pointed it out, and I was like, yo, here's a red-bellied woodpecker. And Sam was like, oh yeah, there it is. It looks cool. So I think it's a red-bellied woodpecker.
It is. It's a red-bellied woodpecker. Good callback. I know last week I tested you with a bird that we heard out in the field.
I know.
Then it didn't quite work out, so I thought I'd do it again. This time it definitely worked out.
Yeah.
That was good. I think that's another one we can maybe add to our list of we hear this bird and we know what it is.
Yeah, I feel like that's one we can add into our repertoire of birds we can readily recognize. Yeah, along with the greater yellowlegs at this point, we've been hearing it so often.
Yeah,
cool. Great. It feels good to get some points on the board.
Good on us. Unfortunately, we are still tied, so no difference there. But difference in our morale, I'd say.
Yeah, maybe just 2 episodes left of the season. So don't be too sad. There will be a season 3, but cherish these last few episodes. How about that?
Yeah. Don't cry because it's over.
Smile
because it happened.
Smile because it happened.
Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for leading that discussion on hummingbirds. Those are very cool. And, 15 sounds like a lot that we get up here. But, compared to Colombia, that's almost nothing. So, very cool to kind of hear about a bird that we don't get to see too much of. But one that I think occupies quite a lot of our bird brains,
Yeah, I'm really hoping to see some in some full plumage here pretty soon.
Yeah.
We probably are able to see the males at this point. Maybe the females still aren't over here yet.
I imagine so.
Yeah, you know the drill. Send us in some hoot topics. Send us in some main topic suggestions at birdsarereal.pod@gmail.com. Or just, if you want to say hi, feel free to do that too.
Yeah, we love to chat. We'll get back to you within 3 weeks. You know, we're not great at responding to emails, but we'll try to be better. You can also follow us on Instagram at birdsarerealpod. And just, enjoy listening. If this is your first episode, go back. We have a nice hefty little catalog of episodes. If you've enjoyed this one, you'll enjoy the rest. If this is your 5th episode, listen to a 6th,
Yeah, we always want you guys coming back for more. So leave us a rating if you haven't. If you're enjoying the pod, if you're not enjoying, don't leave us a rating.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll catch you guys next time.
I'm going to go order 55 burgers, 55 fries,
55 tacos, 55 pies.
tacos.